Hello, my friend. Welcome to your sleep story. My name is Anna. I'm a storyteller, and it's my great privilege to be the voice that you listen to as you go to sleep tonight. Before we begin, if you're finding comfort in these stories, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It helps others find these peaceful moments too. Your support means the world. Tonight, we journey into an ancient forest where a bear has forgotten something essential, something we all need to remember sometimes: the art of rest, of letting go, of trusting that we don't always need to keep moving. This is a story about slowing down, about the wisdom that comes not from doing more, but from being still. I hope it brings you that same peace tonight. Now let's begin the relaxation session, which will take a few minutes before tonight's sleep story. I'm going to count down from 10 to 1, and as I do, allow yourself to let go more and more. Feel the support of the bed beneath you, or the floor, or whatever you lie upon tonight. Really feel that support. And beneath all of that, there is the support of the earth, our home, our constant support. And notice that the more you become aware of that support, the more you can let go, the more you can sink into this moment. Deeper and deeper now. You are safe. Know that tonight my voice is nothing but a friend, a guide of kindness that will only ever take you to safe places. Allow my voice to be an anchor of peace tonight, guiding you to beautiful, wondrous places. Places where rest is not earned, but simply given. Become aware of your body now. And as you do, just become aware of your breath for a moment. Perhaps take a deep breath in through your nose when you're ready, and breathe out when you're ready. And maybe another deep breath. In and out. And as you become aware of that breath, the breathing out, with each out breath, let go a little more, release a little more, soften into this moment. Maybe move through your body now. Check where you're holding tension or pain. Maybe it's in your feet, your lower legs, your thighs, your belly, your chest, your back, your shoulders, your hands, your arms, your neck. Or maybe you're like me. Do you hold the tension in your face, in your jaw, around your eyes? Just let it all go now. Every muscle softening, every thought quieting. The day is done. Whatever has been, has been. Whatever will be, will be. But right now, in this moment, there is only this breath, only this softness. Whatever thoughts you may be having, don't fight them. Just see them for what they are. Thoughts. A symptom of being human. Nothing more than clouds passing through your mind. And as they arrive, welcome them. And then just let them go. Watch them float away like leaves on a moonlit river, or clouds passing through a starlit sky. This is your moment. This is your time. You deserve rest. You deserve peace. You deserve to stop carrying everything for just these moments. There is nowhere to be now, nowhere to go, no obligations, absolutely nothing to do but settle into this moment. Let the weight of the world fall away. Peace lives within you. It is always there. It's just waiting to be found, waiting to be felt. Like a quiet room in a busy house, it's always there when you need it. Maybe you can find it tonight. Maybe you can journey to that peace with your mind's eye now. Maybe you find it in your chest or in your head. Somewhere deep and still and yours. Wherever you might find it, know that it's a constant friend, always there, always waiting. Perhaps feel a little gratitude now. Gratitude for the simple things, for the shelter you have tonight, whatever it may be. For the use of your body, for all it does for you each day, for the ability to just lie here and listen to a sleep story, for those you love and who love you. Know that you are loved, whoever you are and wherever you are tonight. You are enough. You are worthy of rest. Begin to engage with your imagination now. Begin to see an ancient forest. Trees so old they remember when the world was young. And in this forest lives a bear. A good bear. A tired bear. A bear who has forgotten how to rest. See him now in your mind's eye. See the golden afternoon light filtering through the canopy. Smell the earth and pine and autumn. Check in with your body one more time now. It has worked hard for you today. It's time to give it rest. Completely letting go now as I tell you tonight's sleep story. Deep in a forest that had stood for longer than anyone could remember, where the trees grew so tall, their tops seemed to brush the clouds, and their roots ran deeper than memory. There lived a bear who had forgotten how to rest. His name, if bears have names in the way we understand them, was something like the sound of wind through pine needles. But we'll call him Bear, because that's simple and true. Bear's fur was the color of honey darkened by time, rich brown with hints of amber when the light caught it just right. His paws were broad and strong, scarred from years of digging and climbing and all the work that bears must do. His eyes were dark and kind, but tired, so very tired. The forest where Bear lived was ancient and peaceful. Oak trees stood with trunks so wide it would take 5 people holding hands to circle them. Birch trees lifted their pale arms to the sky. Pine trees whispered constantly, sharing secrets in a language only they understood. Moss grew thick and soft on every surface, carpeting the forest floor in shades of green, so deep they seemed to hold their own light. A stream ran through the heart of the forest, cold and clear, bubbling over smooth stones that had been there since the beginning of things. The water sang as it moved, a constant gentle music that never stopped, not even in winter when ice formed at its edges. This was a place of deep peace, the kind of peace that settles into your bones if you stay still long enough, the kind that whispers that everything is exactly as it should be. But Bear had forgotten how to hear that whisper. Every morning, Bear woke before dawn. Not because he wanted to, not because he enjoyed the quiet blue light of early morning, but because something inside him would not let him rest. He would wake with his heart already racing, his mind already spinning with lists of things that needed doing, the honey stores to check, the fallen tree near his den that should probably be moved, the patch of berries on the far hill that might need protecting from the rabbits. So much to do. Always so much to do. On this particular morning, which was an autumn morning with the first real chill in the air, Bear woke in his usual way, heart racing, mind spinning. He pushed himself up from his sleeping spot, a depression in the earth lined with dried grass and leaves that he'd collected over the summer. His body ached, his shoulders, his back, his paws. Everything ached in that deep way that comes from never quite resting, never quite letting go. But he ignored it. He always ignored it. Bear stepped out of his den into the cool morning air. The sun hadn't risen yet, but the sky was beginning to lighten in the east. That particular shade of blue-gray that comes just before dawn. The stars were fading. The moon was setting beyond the western hills. The forest was still mostly asleep. A few early birds were beginning their songs, tentative at first, then growing bolder. Somewhere distant, a fox called to its mate. The stream sang its endless song. Bear stood outside his den and breathed in the morning. The air was sharp and clean, carrying the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves, and the first hints of winter coming down from the north. For just a moment, standing there in the quiet, Bear felt something close to peace. But then his mind started up again. The lists, the worries, the endless sense that he was forgetting something important, missing something crucial, falling behind in some race he couldn't even name. He shook his massive head as if to clear it and set off into the forest. First, he would check the honey tree, the old oak on the south side of the forest that hosted a colony of bees in a hollow high up its trunk. Bear had an agreement with the bees, the way bears and bees have had agreements since the beginning of time. He protected their tree from woodpeckers and climbing cats, and in return, they shared some of their honey. Not that Bear needed to check the honey tree. The bees were perfectly capable of managing their own affairs. But checking things, making sure everything was in order, was what Bear did. He walked through the forest on paths he'd worn smooth over years of walking. The ground was soft with fallen leaves. They rustled quietly under his paws. Oak leaves, brittle and brown. Birch leaves, golden and papery. Maple leaves in shades of red and orange that seemed to glow even in the dim morning light. Above him, the canopy was beginning to thin as autumn progressed. More sky was visible between the branches now. More light filtered down to the forest floor. It made everything look different, sharper somehow, more defined. Bear reached the honey tree just as the sun was rising. Golden light slanted through the trees, turning the world honey-colored. The bees were just beginning to stir, the first few emerging from the hollow to test the morning air. The tree looked fine. The hollow was secure. The bees were healthy and busy. There was nothing that needed doing. But Bear stood there anyway, looking up at the hollow, his mind already moving to the next thing on his endless list. The berry patch. He should check the berry patch. He turned and began walking north. His pace was quick, purposeful. Not the ambling walk of a bear at peace, but the determined stride of someone with places to be and things to do. The forest tried to slow him down. A shaft of sunlight fell across the path, illuminating tiny particles of dust and pollen floating in the air, each one catching the light like a tiny star. But Bear walked through it without pausing. A spider's web stretched between two branches, covered in morning dew. Each drop reflecting the world in miniature. Beautiful. Perfect. But Bear ducked under it without seeing. A family of rabbits sat in a small clearing, grooming each other in the new sunlight, their movements slow and content. Bear passed them without a glance. The forest was trying to teach him something, had been trying to teach him for a long time, but he wasn't listening. The berry patch was on the side of a hill that faced south, catching the full sun during the growing season. Most of the berries were gone now, eaten by birds and deer and other bears. The bushes had turned that particular shade of red-brown that comes in autumn, their leaves preparing to fall. Bear walked through the patch, checking each bush as if something might have changed overnight, as if there was something here that required his attention. There wasn't. But still, his mind wouldn't rest. There was the den to prepare for winter. More grass to gather. More leaves. The entrance should be checked, made secure against the cold winds that would come. And so Bear turned back toward home, his pace never slowing, his mind never quieting. He didn't notice the owl. She was sitting in an old oak tree near the path, her feathers fluffed against the morning cool, her enormous golden eyes watching him pass. She had been watching him for many mornings, watching his hurried walking, his constant checking, his inability to simply be. This morning she decided to speak. "Bear," she called, her voice soft but carrying in the quiet morning. "Where are you going in such a hurry?" Bear stopped. He looked up into the tree, searching for the source of the voice. It took him a moment to see her. Owls are good at not being seen when they don't want to be. "Owl," he said, because he knew her, the way all forest creatures know each other. "I'm checking things, making sure everything is ready for winter." "Ah," said Owl. She shifted on her branch, settling her wings more comfortably around herself. "And when you've checked everything, when everything is ready, then what?" Bear considered this. "Then I'll rest," he said. Owl tilted her head in that way owls do, her neck rotating far further than seems possible. "Will you?" she asked gently. Bear opened his mouth to say yes, of course he would. But the words didn't come, because standing there in the morning light, being asked the question out loud, he realized something. He wouldn't rest. He never rested. There was always one more thing. Always something else that needed checking, needed fixing, needed doing. The realization settled over him like a weight. "I don't know how anymore," he said quietly. The words surprised him. He hadn't known he was going to say them until they were out. Owl made a soft sound, not quite a hoot, more like a sigh of understanding. "Come," she said. "Sit with me for a moment." "I have things to do," Bear said automatically. "I know," said Owl, "but perhaps those things can wait. Just for a moment. Just long enough to sit." Bear wanted to say no. Wanted to continue on his path, continue his checking, his preparing, his constant motion. But something in Owl's voice, something gentle and wise and patient, made him stop. He sat, right there on the path, his large body sinking onto his haunches, then further down until he was sitting fully, his weight resting on the earth. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Bear was still. "Look around you," Owl said softly. "What do you see?" Bear looked. At first he saw what he always saw: trees, path, forest, things that needed checking. But Owl waited, patient and quiet. And slowly, Bear began to see more. He saw the way the morning light filtered through the remaining leaves, painting patterns on the forest floor. Patterns that shifted and changed as the leaves moved in the gentle breeze. He saw a line of ants crossing the path, each one carrying something, moving in that determined way ants have. They walked in a line so straight it might have been drawn with a ruler. He saw the bark on the tree across from him, rough and textured, home to tiny insects and patches of lichen in shades of gray-green. He saw the moss growing on a fallen log, so thick and soft it looked like a cushion, emerald green and velvety. "What do you hear?" Owl asked. Bear listened, really listened, not just hearing the sounds, but truly listening to them. The stream in the distance, its constant song, the wind moving through the trees, each type of tree making its own sound, the pines sighing, the oaks rustling, the birches whispering, birds calling to each other. Not alarm calls, just the gentle conversations of creatures going about their day. His own breathing, in and out, in and out. His own heartbeat, that constant drum that had been racing for so long, beginning to slow. "What do you feel?" Owl asked. Bear felt the earth beneath him, solid and cool and endlessly supportive, holding him up the way it had held up trees and rocks and all living things since the beginning. He felt the air on his fur, moving gently, carrying the scent of autumn and approaching winter. He felt his own tiredness, not the surface tiredness that comes from a day's work, but the deep tiredness that lives in bones and muscles and spirit. The tiredness that comes from forgetting how to rest. "I'm so tired," Bear said. His voice was very quiet. "I know," said Owl. They sat together in silence for a long time. Owl in her tree, Bear on the path below. The sun climbed higher. The morning warmed slightly. The forest moved around them in its slow, ancient rhythms. Finally, Owl spoke again. "Tell me, Bear, why do you work so hard?" Bear thought about this. "To be ready," he said, "to be prepared, to make sure everything is safe and secure." "And has there ever been a winter when you weren't ready?" Owl asked. Bear considered. "No," he admitted. "I suppose not. Has there ever been a winter when you didn't have enough honey, enough food, enough preparations?" "No." "So why do you think this winter will be different?" Bear didn't have an answer. Owl continued, her voice gentle. "Every autumn, the trees let go of their leaves. Every winter, the stream slows and freezes. Every spring, everything returns. The forest trusts these rhythms. Why don't you?" "But what if I forget something?" Bear asked. "What if I miss something important?" "And what if you don't?" Owl replied. "What if everything is actually fine? What if you've done enough?" The words settled over Bear like snow, soft and quiet and impossible to ignore. What if he'd done enough? What if he was enough? What if rest wasn't something to be earned after all the work was done, but was itself necessary and important? "I don't know how to stop," Bear said. "Then perhaps," said Owl, "we start with small moments, like this one, sitting on a path on an autumn morning, being still, being here." "Just sitting?" Bear asked. "Just sitting," Owl confirmed. So they sat, and the world didn't fall apart. The forest continued its ancient rhythms. The sun continued rising. The stream continued singing. And Bear began to feel something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Something that wasn't tiredness or worry, or the pressure of undone tasks. He felt peace, just a tiny bit, like a single drop of water. But it was there. After a while, Owl said, "I must sleep now. We owls are not built for long mornings. But perhaps tomorrow we could sit together again. I'd like that, Bear said, and he meant it. Owl spread her wings, enormous and silent, and flew deeper into the forest to find her sleeping tree. Bear stood up slowly. His body still ached, but somehow less than before. Or perhaps he was just more aware of it, more gentle with it. He began walking back toward his den, but his pace was different now. Slower. He noticed things, the way the light moved, the smell of the forest, the feeling of the earth under his paws. And when he passed the spider's web he'd missed before, this time he stopped. He looked at it, really looked at it, at the perfect geometry of its construction, at the morning dew caught in its threads, at the small spider sitting patiently in its center. Beautiful. It was beautiful. He continued home, and when he arrived at his den, instead of immediately starting on some task, he simply stood outside for a moment, looking, breathing, being. Then he went inside, circled 3 times in his sleeping spot the way bears do, and lay down. He would rest now, just for a little while. Not because all the work was done, but because rest itself was important, was necessary, was wise. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, Bear slept during the day. His body relaxed into the earth. His breathing deepened. His mind finally went quiet. Outside, the forest continued. The sun moved across the sky. The leaves drifted down from the trees. The stream sang its endless song, and Bear rested. When he woke, the light had changed. It was late afternoon now. The sun was lower in the sky, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. Bear stretched slowly, feeling the pull in his muscles, the pleasant heaviness of genuine rest. He felt different. Not completely restored, not yet, but better, clearer. He stepped outside. The air had cooled with the advancing afternoon. The light was softer now, more gentle. Bear began to walk. But this time he wasn't checking things. He wasn't rushing to some task. He was simply walking, experiencing the forest, being part of it rather than constantly trying to manage it. He walked to the stream and sat beside it. He watched the water move over the stones, endlessly moving, endlessly the same. There was something hypnotic about it, something that quieted the mind. He dipped one paw in the water. It was cold, very cold. It made his paw ache in a way that was somehow pleasant. sharp and clean and real. He sat by the stream until the sun began to set. The sky turned pink and orange and purple. The birds grew quiet. The evening insects began their songs. And Bear found that he didn't want to rush back to his den. Didn't want to find some task to fill these moments. He just wanted to sit here, watching the day end, being present for this transition from light to dark. Finally, as true darkness began to fall and the first stars appeared, Bear stood up. He walked slowly back to his den, and when he arrived, he realized something. He was hungry, not stressed, not worried, not anxious, just hungry. And that was okay. That was normal. That was how things were supposed to be. He found some honey he'd stored. He ate it slowly, tasting it, really tasting it. The sweetness, the thickness, the way it coated his tongue. Then he prepared his sleeping spot, arranged the grass and leaves, made it comfortable, and he lay down. Not because he had checked everything, not because all the work was done, but simply because it was time to sleep. As he drifted off, he thought about tomorrow, about sitting with Owl again, about learning more about this rest, this peace, this being still. The autumn days continued, each one shorter than the last, each one bringing winter closer. And each morning Bear met Owl on the path. They didn't always talk. Sometimes they just sat together. Owl with her eyes half closed, Bear with his breathing slow and deep. Other times, Owl would share small wisdoms. Nothing complicated, nothing profound. Just simple truths that Bear had forgotten. Notice the breath, she would say. In and out. It never stops. Your whole life, breathing. And you never have to remember to do it. It just happens. And Bear would notice his breath. In and out. In and out. Steady and reliable. Feel your body, Owl would say. It carries you everywhere. It works so hard. It deserves kindness. And Bear would feel his body, his strong legs, his powerful shoulders, his brave heart, and he would be grateful. Watch the trees, Owl would say. They don't worry about winter. They simply prepare and then let go. They trust. And Bear would watch the trees, see how they released their leaves without clinging, how they stood bare and unashamed, how they trusted that spring would come again. Slowly, day by day, something was shifting in Bear. The constant worry, the endless lists, the sense that he was never doing enough, these were beginning to loosen their grip. He still worked. He still prepared for winter. But now, when he checked the honey tree, he also took a moment to watch the bees, admired their organization, their cooperation, their sense of purpose. When he walked to the berry patch, he noticed the changing colors of the leaves, stopped to investigate interesting mushrooms, watched deer grazing in the distance. When he gathered grass and leaves for his den, he appreciated the smell of them, the texture, the way they would keep him warm through the cold months. Work became something different. Not a burden, not a race, but simply part of the rhythm of life. Something to be done with attention and care, but not with anxiety. And rest became something different too. Not something to be earned, but something to be welcomed. A gift, a necessity, a wisdom. The nights grew longer, the days grew colder. The trees became bare, their branches reaching toward the sky like prayers. Frost began to appear in the mornings, painting everything white. And Bear began to feel something he had forgotten. A pulling deep in his body. An ancient knowledge waking up. The need to hibernate. To sleep deeply through the winter. To trust that he had done enough. That he was enough. That he could let go. One morning, Bear woke to find snow falling. The first snow of the season. Large flakes drifting down slowly, covering everything in white. He knew it was time. He walked to the oak tree one last time. Owl was there, as if she had been waiting for him. "It's time," Bear said. Not a question, a statement. "Yes," Owl agreed. "Are you ready?" Bear thought about this. Was he ready? Ready to stop? Ready to rest? Ready to sleep through the entire winter, trusting that everything would be okay? "I think so," he said. "I'm still a little scared." "That's okay," Owl said. "Fear is natural, but so is rest. You've done enough, Bear. You are enough. Now it's time to sleep. Will you be here when I wake?" Bear asked. "I'll be here," Owl promised. "The forest will be here. Spring will come. You can trust that." Bear nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said, "for teaching me, for sitting with me, for helping me remember." "You remembered yourself," Owl said. "I just kept you company while you did." Bear looked up at the falling snow. He felt the cold air on his face. He breathed in deeply, filling his lungs with the clean winter smell. Then he turned toward his den for the last time before spring. "Rest well, Bear," Owl called softly. "Rest well, Owl. Bear replied. He walked back to his den slowly, not hurrying, not rushing, just walking, being present for this last journey before the long sleep. When he arrived, his den looked perfect. The entrance was sheltered from the wind. The inside was lined with thick grass and leaves. It was warm and dry and safe. Bear stepped inside. He circled once, twice, 3 times. Then he lay down, his body fitting perfectly into the space he had prepared. Outside, the snow continued to fall. It covered his entrance, creating a natural insulation. It covered the forest, muffling all sound, creating a deep quiet. Bear's breathing began to slow. His heartbeat began to slow. His body began to release into sleep. And as he drifted deeper, he felt no worry, no anxiety, no sense that he had forgotten something, missed something, failed at something. He felt only peace, deep peace. The peace that comes from trusting, from letting go, from knowing that rest is not weakness, but wisdom. His last thought before sleep took him completely was simple. I am enough. I have done enough. Now I rest. And Bear slept. Outside, winter settled over the forest. The stream froze at its edges. The trees stood bare against the gray sky. Snow piled deep, covering everything in white silence. But underneath, deep in the earth, in dens and burrows and hollow trees, life rested. Bears slept. Badgers slept. Groundhogs and chipmunks and frogs slept, all trusting that spring would come, all trusting that this rest was right and necessary and good. And in her tree, Owl kept watch. She hunted in the long winter nights. She slept in the short winter days. She waited patiently, as owls do, for the world to turn. Months passed. The winter deepened, then began to lighten. The days grew longer, almost imperceptibly at first, then more noticeably. The sun climbed higher in the sky. Snow began to melt. Streams began to flow more freely. The first brave green shoots began to push through the softening earth. And deep in his den, Bear stirred, not waking, not yet, but responding to something, some ancient clock, some deep knowledge that winter was ending. His breathing changed slightly. His heartbeat began to quicken. His body began to remember being awake. One morning, when the sun was bright and the air smelled of mud and new growth and possibility, Bear opened his eyes. For a moment he lay there, not moving, remembering where he was, remembering that he had slept through the entire winter, remembering Owl and the autumn and the lessons learned. He felt rested, truly rested. For the first time in years, maybe decades, maybe ever. Slowly, carefully, he stretched. His body was stiff from months of stillness, but strong, healthy, whole. He crawled toward the entrance of his den, pushed through the remains of the snow that had drifted there, emerged into the spring morning. The forest was transformed, green everywhere, tender and new and impossibly bright. Flowers were blooming. Birds were singing. The stream was rushing full with snowmelt. Life. Everywhere, life. Bear stood outside his den, feeling the warm sun on his fur, and he smiled. A small bear smile, content and grateful and at peace. He heard a familiar voice. "Welcome back, Bear." He looked up. Owl was in her oak tree, looking slightly rumpled from a night of hunting, but alert and wise as ever. "Hello, Owl," Bear said. "I rested." "I know," said Owl. "I saw. You did beautifully." "I'm still tired," Bear admitted. "A little. But it's different now." "It's okay." "Yes," Owl said. "Now you know. Rest isn't something to be earned. It's something to be honored, something to be trusted." Bear nodded. He understood now, really understood. He would work today. He would explore the spring forest, find food, check on things. But he would also rest. He would sit by the stream. He would watch the clouds. He would be still when stillness was needed. He had learned. Finally, after all this time, he had learned. "Thank you," he said to Owl. "You're welcome," Owl replied. "Now go. The forest is waiting, and so is your life." Bear began to walk, slowly, peacefully, into the spring morning, into the rest of his life. And somewhere deep inside him, a truth had settled. A truth that would stay with him through all the seasons to come. He was enough. He was always enough. And rest was not something to be earned, but something to be embraced. A gift. A wisdom. A way of being alive. And so Bear lived. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but with a new understanding, a new gentleness toward himself. And every autumn, when the leaves began to turn, he would remember. He would sit with Owl. He would practice stillness. He would honor rest. And every winter, he would sleep deeply, trusting that spring would come, trusting that he had done enough, trusting that he was enough. And in that trust, he found peace. The forest held him. The earth supported him. The seasons turned, and Bear rested when rest was needed, worked when work was needed, lived when life called him to live. And that was enough. That was everything. That was the wisdom he had searched for without knowing he was searching. The simple, profound truth that resting is not giving up. It's giving in to the rhythms of nature, to the wisdom of the body, to the cycles that have existed since the beginning. And in that surrender, there is not weakness, but strength, not failure, but wisdom, not ending, but continuing. Bear lived this truth, and the forest whispered it to anyone who would listen. Rest, trust, let go. You are enough. You have always been enough. And the stream sang its endless song, and the trees grew toward the sky, and the seasons turned, and life continued, beautiful and whole, and exactly as it should be. Rest now, like Bear, like the forest, like all of nature knows how to do. Rest and trust that you are enough, that you have done enough, that this moment, exactly as it is enough. Rest.